to know more about the company, you can just simply Google around and have a look around that. So before getting started about me, it's like, mostly I blog around at my blog itself, my view, and most of the times I also write on that C# corner as well. Apart from that, if you guys have any questions around, let's say around my articles, videos, books, you can directly ask me on Twitter handle, or you can ask me on this link as well, which is AMA link here. Let's move around .NET and let's talk something about what's going to happen around, what's happening around .NET Stack. First of all, let me tell you quite frankly that ever since .NET Core has been introduced, so people had this confusion around this stack, like, okay, I am going to have, utilize that battle ready framework as in .NET framework plus .NET Core, which means I'm going to embrace the goodness of .NET Core as in cross-platform as well as what I have been doing as in .NET framework. So there is slight confusion on that. That's why I put up this slide on top of that. So there is something called .NET framework, which is entirely based on Windows kernel. That means which is entirely meant for Windows OS. There is a cross-platform services which is named as .NET Core, which means the bare minimum items which can run across the platform. That means which can be run on Windows plus Linux plus Mac or Docker, anything. So they're the common things. It's like a subset of .NET framework which can be packaged and bundled and can be deployed on these platforms. There is also another addition for that, that is Xamarin, which is not a part of this talk, so I'm skipping that particular thing. So let me go to the next slide. So this says like unified platform. So if you see the bottom of this stack, it's pretty similar what we have been seeing from ages, like ever since we have started from .NET development. It's all about common infrastructure. There is something new which has been introduced, that is called .NET Standard Library. Although in this particular section, I'm not going to talk about .NET Standard Library. I'll be sticking around .NET Core itself. But maybe in future webinars we can talk to .NET Standard Library, and we can learn more about that. What is this is so this is a kind of you can think of this as middleware, which talks to your actual core .NET, and which is applicable for all of these three families, whether it is .NET Framework Core or .NET Core or Xamarin. So any API which is coming out of .NET Standard Library will be applicable for all these families. So this is where .NET is heading. On the right side, you can see the tooling sections, which is obviously there, Visual Studio for Mac, which is introduced, I guess, last year, and then Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code will be, in this particular section, we'll be talking about, so we'll be starting with code itself. And so once we move to a demo, so you can see that. So before demo, I thought it would be nice, like, before taking any technology as a stack, it should be nice if you know the numbers up ahead. Like why should you choose this particular technology, and what is happening around this particular arena. Ever since Microsoft has announced that it is going open source, right? So what is happening around this? You can see this GitHub numbers, although this is not up-to-date number, but Microsoft is leading there, because the reason being is there are many people from different communities, whether it's PHP, Python, Ruby, or even from Linux Foundation. They are coming to this open source community and contributing new features around that, so that the new features which can be requested when it was a closed source, it used to take years to get into place. Only Microsoft could have the release that. But now, ever since it's been open source, so everyone can contribute there. You can just send them pull request on their GitHub, and after verification and all, testing and all, they can easily merge that thing. Then it comes like a Facebook, Docker, Angular, and Google. So this is the power of open source, and you can think of about that, how good it is. This is also quite interesting number, which is web server market share. So originally Apache was leading. This is the line which you can see here. This was leading ever since But ever since Microsoft has announced its open sourceness, so you can see this red line, this has started, peaking suddenly, and this is coming down. So this is where, technology is hitting. Everybody from different categories, even people from Java is, a recent addition is the Google, who is coming here, and TypeScript they have announced as in their official language. So you can think of like how powerful this particular stack is and where it's heading. Okay, now let's come to the agenda. So ASP.NET Core, previously it was known as ASP.NET 5. So ever since it's launched as in ASP.NET 5, there was a certain confusion around this particular developers community, and even program managers get confused like, okay, ASP.NET 5 is the bigger number than 4.6, which means it is going to embrace all the capabilities which .NET Framework 4.6 is having, plus cross-platform goodness, but it was not the case. That is why it's renamed as Core. So it is going to embrace only those functionalities which is good for all three platforms. So this is a subset of actual ASP.NET, which is 4.6. So that's why it's renamed to ASP.NET Core. So these are the certain things which you must be knowing, like the whole agenda of this ASP.NET Core building is like, it has to be completely modular. When I say completely modular, here it means dependency injection is sitting at its core. Where that means like whatever thing which you are going to need, you need to request for that, you need to configure services for that. So we'll be seeing all these things in while we start coding around that. So you can think of that. That is why it is pretty lean and thin, and is kind of on-demand coding. Whatever features you are going to need, you can just request for that, and you can just build around that. Obviously, it's going to have faster development cycle because as and when whatever the things is going to be required, you are actually writing the components. So it is apart from that, there is performance improvement. So it used to be the cases wherein that ASP.NET processing lifecycle, that means HTTP handlers and HTTP module, it used to rely upon. So there we didn't have that much room to actually fork into that particular pipeline and to limit that number of HTTP requests which is going across the pipeline. So here in case of modular, what we have this capability, like how do you want to configure the middleware? You will see in coding while we start that. So in a nutshell, I can see that you can bring, you can obviously make .NET framework, you can make a core components using .NET framework, targeting .NET framework. In that case, what will happen eventually, if you go to your project properties, it will be framework will be 4.6.1 there. And if you are building completely .NET Core, which you are targeting around all these three platforms, then what will happen basically, you will see .NET Core there as in framework. So that's the difference. Plus it is going to have that subset version. Let's say you are writing something around, which is embracing systems.paint or some paint controls you are bringing in, or some kind of GDI features which Microsoft kernel actually understands or OS understands. In that particular case, you won't be able to utilize those features in code. So that's the difference. So you actually need to decide upon like it's the decision making which you need to take, like what is your target platform, whether it's going to be only Windows, or is it going to be the cross platform. So that's the case. Now, just a history, that web pages, MVC and web API, these all things worked great, and even today this is working as great as ever since it has been introduced. But the thing is, this pretty much looks similar but quite different. If you look, if you come down to their core implementation level, so that is where it lacks, that integration, particularly into that. So you see this web pages and MVC both share the same framework, that is Razor framework, but soon after that, that differentiation starts. That means web pages has its own way of implementing HTML helpers. MVC has got its own way of implementing HTML helpers, right? And then MVC Web API both has got controllers, actions, filters, but they have their own way of implementing their sections, their stacks, right? So what happened basically is like in that case, it creates kind of confusion around developers, like which one to implement and how to integrate that. In order to simplify this particular thing, what has introduced is like ASP.NET Core MVC, which says MVC plus Web API plus web pages equals ASP.NET Core MVC. So this is the, now everything is merged into one stack. Everything is going to be inherited from one stack. So only thing is like whenever you will be using as in API, you will be decorating that with a route and its constraints. When you will be using as a simple controller, then it will continue to work as in simple routes. So this is the complete agenda of that. Now these are the certain features which we are going to, let me see, how can I minimize this? Okay. Let's keep it. Okay, these are the things which will be talking here, I mean, which we are going to implement that. So let's, so before that, just let me minimize this. All right, so I think somebody is not on mute. Can you go on mute? Okay, thanks. And you know, if you guys are coming for first time into .NET, so what you need to do here is there is .NET site, which says this is the URL. So you need to just need to type .NET, and it will, you know, take you to at Microsoft.com/net, and from here you can just start downloading your instances and get started. So once you click on download, it will take you to the different families, like whether you want to download and, you know, .NET Framework or .NET Core. So I will say .NET Core, and now there is a pre-release build version for .NET Core 2.0 preview is also available, which actually comes with Visual Studio 2017 as well. So you can either get started with that, or you can directly flip through to this Windows option. So since I'm on Windows machine, so I'm going to click on this Windows, and either I can select this Visual Studio 2017 itself, or I can use command line section. So I'm going to switch to command line section, and, you know, once you install this utility, then you're good to get started with .NET Core development. There is also very nice video from Kendra Evans here, which is where she is explaining like how to get started with .NET Core, and so you can learn more about this, you know, command line things from there also. So let's get started. All right, so let's start afresh. So let's say create something, maybe. So I've just created one directory over here, and the command which I'm going to talk about is .NET. So everything is around .NET itself. So when I say .NET new, so these are the options which has been given to me. Like this is kind of template selection which you can make it from the class library itself. I mean, sorry, from the command line itself. Like whether you are interested in building console app, or you are interested in building, you know, class library or ASP.NET family, you can pick from around that, and it is going to scaffold your project, you know, around that particular area, like what we used to do with that Visual Studio. So here I'm going to get started with console app. So I just need to tell, that's it. So it had created me that project. Now if I see here what are the things it has dropped here, right? So there is a program file which is quite simple, and this is nothing but a hello world file, and there is webinar as well, sorry, CS proj file, which is nothing but, it's saying that your framework is .NET Core app. That's it. So that's a pretty simple thing. Now just go here. So ever since we created a new thing, it has to restore all the steps in order to build the thing. So for restoring that, what I can do here, I can use this term .NET Restore. So what it will do, it will download all the feeds, all the required components from the NuGet feed itself. So as you can see here, it has downloaded, and here in the side window, you can see it, all this my assets has been downloaded. So if you look at these assets, so this is a complete JSON file which is telling all this runtime dependencies which any console app is going to need that, right? So this is how it has been laid out. If you have any familiarity with earlier versions of .NET, so what used to be there is like it used to be project.json file, and now this has been changed to .cs proj file. So only thing is like with project.json, it used to be a problem like how do you port an existing .NET framework app to code. So in that case, they have decided to switch to that particular switch to back to CS proj and make an existing improvements there, so that it can act as a bridge between the .NET Core and your .NET framework app, so that you can migrate easily around that arena. So that's the one thing. Now, if you're any project which is on earlier version of .NET Core, which is still having project.json, then you can use this command .NET migrate, and what it will do, it will convert your program, your app into .cs proj, and it will just create a backup folder of your project.json, and it will place all those assets into that. But that's fine, we are starting a fresh here, so we can continue with that. And I can now either directly run, or let me just build this once. So once you build is completed, you can see here my bin folder has been created, and this is what it is going to target this DLL to run my app here. So this is a step-by-step process. First these two files were available, then once I restored this, my obj file got created, then my bin. So this is how all we are going to target step-by-step steps. So now when I do that .NET run, oops. So it's nice, so it's working. So now let's open in code. So in order to open the project in its context, you just need to type code space start, and it will launch your editor, and you can just close this. And I can, there is something, zoom in so that you guys can see here. Now, this is my program file which I was talking about, right? So now let's see that here it's saying that required assets required, because these are the assets which is required to run this app from your editor itself. So I say yes, then it has dropped me VS Code, and these are the two required files. So this launch.json is going to tell that what is the CLR I'm going to target. So this is core CLR, and this is where it is going to look for my webinar.dll, which is going to get executed while it is going to run, and this task.json is going to use this command .NET, which I am running from my command line. So these are all editor settings, right? And let me just go to this webinar CS proj file. Earlier we used to have project.json, so there I used to get quite significant what I can say, like intelligence. But here this is still in improvement stage, so this intelligence is kind of a cranky here. So what I can do here, I can just copy this thing from here, and I just save this guy here. Now as soon as I just saved this, it asking me to restore the thing. So either I can restore this stuff which I have, which I will require to make it as a web app, either from here or directly from the command line. So let's click on restore. Let's do it from here. Now in this output console, you can see that it's just restored all the stuff which is required from NuGet feed, so which we have already seen here, how to do that from command line. Now let's go to the program file and let's do that. So sometimes it happens to me, like as soon as I restore from the editor, it quickly, it doesn't take those things like required assets in the editor quite frequently. So I'm just going to close that and open that editor again, so that it will take that effect. And let's do something. I mean, so currently this is a console app. By the way, any ASP.NET Core by default itself is a console app. So if you are coming from a web background, where you do expect like a web kind of thing, like a global SX and all those things, like it is not going to be the scene. So everything is going to be, so there is two things here. Program.file, program.cs file, like we have a console file, is the entry point of your ASP.NET Core app, right? So there you will be wiring up your things with HTTP server, which is Kestrel here, right? And then you will be building your components around that, and then you will be hosting the same. So what I'm going to do here is like I'll be doing here. So I'll be needing that host file, which is going to be an instance of obviously web host builder. And sorry, I forgot to new this up. And what I can do here is build, and then I can simply go ahead and I just need to run this. Sorry, looks like my IntelliSense is a little cranky. All right, so what are the things I have done here? So first of all, I need to resolve these things. So now it's taking. Now if I go ahead and run this guy, so what do you think, what will happen? Any predictions? Like so let's see that what is going to happen here. So if I just say .NET run, so it has failed. Now it has failed with a valid reason, like to get started you need a startup file. So either you create a startup file and use an startup, or you just need to fork into that middleware pipeline, or you create a middleware pipeline first of all and write into that context. So there are two ways. So either I can simply go ahead and that configure the pipeline, which is going to take me, sorry, sometimes it behaves okay, sometimes not okay. Now app is my app builder instance, which is going to act as a middleware here, and run will be my terminal middleware. So here into that middleware, what I'm going to tell that write into that particular context, and let's say I am going to tell it into that, right into that response which is getting written as in something like so let's say hello world from what configure. Just save this guy. Now we need to resolve these things. So it usually happens to me like write async, it never resolves for me. So what I usually do, I manually type that guy in. So ASP.NET Core .http, that's fine. And with that being said, I can just close this. With that being said, it's looking fine. Now it's looking fine. So now let's build this guy again. So it has again failed. So now it's saying that server is not known here. Basically, no service for type hosting server is not able to find that. It's not registered. So we are creating an instance of web host builder which is going to get hosted, but hosted where? There is no server. Web server is wired in here. So I'm going to now use built-in web server for ASP.NET Core, that is Kestrel, and I'm just going to hook that guy in. So what I have done here, I have created an host. I said like use Kestrel as a web server, use configure in order to fork into that startup file, or since I'm not using a startup file yet, so you create a middleware, and into that middleware you just write a context which is an HTTP context into that returning response saying that hello world from configure, and then just build an environment around that and just run that thing so that I can listen. So what this build will do, it will create a port around that, and on which it can accept a request, HTTP request from internet. So that is the thing. So now when I just run this guy, I'll do CLS and so it's saying that look, it's now running fine, and so first hello world message is coming from here. This is the very first console write line, and then the other one are the environment things, like by default it runs on production environment, so you can set environment, change environment settings. There is a thing saying that ASP.NET Core _ environment, and then you can set into that part to either development staging. So in that particular context, it will run into that particular environment. And content route path, obviously, where I showed you like from where it's running my app. Now it's listening to port 5000. So when I go ahead and if I go and check localhost 5000, so it's coming. So this is the thing. I just opened my debugger window as well just to show you the traffic. So hello world from configure, this is where it's coming from, my configure file, basically from here. That's okay, but in general coding practice we try to keep it the thing simple, which means when I say simple, it means like you delegate the work which is actually meant for that particular file. So program, it's meant for delegating the things, like this startup thing should be delegated to that startup file. So currently we don't have any startup file. Before that, I wanted to guys to show you something. Control Shift P here in this, type ext, which is means install extensions, and can you go on mute, please? So, thanks. So when you click on install extensions, so by default it will show you like what are the things which I have installed. So this is the extension which is pretty handy, which I have basically written, and this is meant for ASP.NET Core for Visual Studio Code Editor. Either you can type ASP.NET Core here in with that, and you can find it here with that Control Shift P and install extensions, or you can directly go to that site which is marketplace.visualstudio.com, and in that case look for that thing ASP.NET, right, under this Visual Studio Code category. So here you will find there are a bunch of snippets here. So this is the thing which I have written, ASP.NET Core snippet. So you can get the highlight of like what are the commands available and how it is. So these are the snippets. There are a bunch of snippets here, and there are many added after that also. So you can just see this Giphy also, and you can just get the glimpse of that. And because this is kind of a scaffolding thing, so you are not obviously not going to write everything from scratch, which can be done via reusable components, right? So it is good to use all these extensions, because if we are working in Visual Studio, then it's a different scheme altogether. We are going to get a scaffolded template there. But if you are working in a Visual Studio Code and you are developing around something around ASP.NET Core, so it's good to have these things. Okay, so it's good to have those things, handy. So now let's go have and just close this, and let's create a startup file here. So what I have done here, I just commented my configure stuff here, right? So I'm going to supply my configurations from a startup file. So let's create one startup file, startup.cs, and I will, as I said, like I'm going to use the snippets which I have published. So when I type here a startup, you can see here it's showing me my extension name, C# ASP.NET Core, and it just brought me everything in here, right? So in the meantime, I'm just going to I need to resolve these things. Obviously you can resolve this namespaces, and now let's say hello world from startup file. That would be nice, right? And in here, for the moment, let me just comment this guy, and we will be delving into that particular areas one by one. So let's run this. And before that, what I need to tell here, that you need to look at this startup file. So for that, I need to tell use a startup. These are all extension methods which is used with starts with use. You can write your own extension method as well. So here you need to say the class which I have created, and then just wire up the thing. So that's fine. So now what I have done here, instead of forking directly from here, from that program file, I'm just delegating this thing to my startup file, which I just created, right? So this is the simple thing which it is going to produce. So now let me just Control C. Control C is to shut down, and when I again run this guy, and let me just refresh. So it's coming fine. Hello world from a startup file, right? And you can see here that request also it's coming fine here, right? Now let's go ahead and set this. And there is one thing you can notice here, that everything, whatever steps are happening around this, whatever traffic we are going through, it's logging in here. It's logging in here because reason for that is, sorry, I'm in the wrong window. Reason for that is I'm using this logger factory.add console, right? So this is where it's pretty handy as in as in developer environment. You need to sometimes know that traffic and the route where exactly it's intercepting and from where it is picking up the things. So that is where it is pretty handy that it should write somewhere all the things what it's performing. Now let's so what we have done so far is we have started with a scratch. We have simply created a console app. Then we have converted the same into web app. But still this is app is not MVC, right? In order to make this an MVC app, let's say it needs some kind of route, right? So let's say it is going to need let's say webinar, and it should take my, let's say, oops, and here we should supply basically and here we should supply so either we can say use MVC or we can say use MVC with default route. So let's use that, and so what we have done here, so we have provided one route here. If any request / webinar comes, then you should look for this MVC app and use this extension method which is saying with default route. So if you just look around this guy, like so there is use MVC and use MVC with default route. In case of use MVC, you just need to provide this providers. In case of use MVC with default route, it is assumed that by default things are going to be these things. You just don't need to be that explicit. Now let's save this guy and run that again. So now it failed again. So why did it fail? Now it as I mentioned, like everything in ASP.NET Core is modular, which means it is going to have you need to request, you need to in this case, like so guys, if you guys looks like if you guys are having any questions, so as I said, like you post this webinar, you can ask me around that particular AMA link so that I can answer to those things to you, because in between sessions it's kind of little tough if it is webinar thing, because many people may lose the context for that. So please log a request there in issues section. I will share those things once we are done with this, so you can download that thing and you can log a request there, and then I can answer your thread into that thread. So as I said, like this guy failed because everything is modular. That means dependency injection is the first class citizen here in ASP.NET Core, which means I have not configured this particular service add MVC, which is part of this configure services. So this is where we are configuring all on-demand things. So here I have commented that, and for that particular scenario only, just to explain that. So this is where what I'm going to build again, and so now it's running fine. So if I just refresh this guy once, so that's fine. So this is, now let's go to webinar, and if I do webinar, it's still giving me the same thing. So it's going into that webinar, but it's returning from my terminal middleware. So that is run middleware. So which is this one. So one thing to understand here, like that run is your terminal middleware. So whenever it happens, anything comes after run middleware or terminal middleware is not going to be reached. So that is where middleware ordering is very important, right? So you just need to understand here. So in the next webinar, maybe we can understand that middleware ordering and how to map the things and why it is important. But for the time being, you just understand that anything which is going to come after run is not going to be reached. So you need to place it accordingly. It's like routing. When we do that, route config, any greedy route comes before, that is going to be picked up first, and that is going to run. Same way, if run is going to come first, in that particular case, this guy won't be approached if it is coming later. So it has to be placed before that. Now, with that being said, just Control C and .NET Run. Now, if I do webinar now, it came as in 404. So, what do you guys think? What could be the problem here? Let's flip back to that code. So, what do you think? What could be the problem here? So, let me tell you, like what we have done here is we have just configured this use MVC with default route, but the problem, and now it's saying that the controller is going to be home by default and action is going to be indexed, obviously, with an optional ID parameter. But the thing is, where is my controllers? There is no controller configured yet. We have not created any controller so far. So for any MVC app, controller is the nerve of that. It's the key area which is going to take the request, and accordingly it is going to intercept that particular which method needs to be routed to. So what you need to create here, you just need to create controllers folders. So slowly we are reaching out to that exact MVC stuff, what we used to have in actual scaffolded thing from Visual Studio. So this is the home controller. Now again, I am going to use my snippet here, which is I talked about, and I need to just resolve this, and just for the sake, I can return a string, and here let's say something from index method, just to differentiate the things. Now if I go ahead and run this thing, so now it's solved. So it's saying now hello world from index method. If I just remove this guy, then it will land into that middleware, which is hello world from startup file. So it's fairly okay, right? But how about like let's say something which is not like the sum is coming, right? Something which is invalid route. So this is not going to be resolved. Although this is saying 404 message in my developer tool, but it would be nice to have this particular, some kind of messaging there on screen so that user can understand that. So in order to achieve that kind of error handling, right, what you need to do here. So here also, first of all, you can see like all this messaging which is happening here, how it is validating model state is valid, it's how it's intercepting when it's coming through, and then it is serving you that index method. So that's why I told you like, logging is one of the important things during development. Now let's go ahead and do some error handling here. This is the place, right? So what you can do is either you can use status code pages, which is built in the browser. So what this guy will do, this will simply intercept for those messages and it will show you on the screen. So let's run once. All right, now if I just refresh this, so here you see this status code has come here. So same 404 which is showing here. So this has actually intercepted the traffic, and from there it actually taken out and just printed this a kind of message which is 404 not found thing, status code, right? So this is okay, but when you are designing your component around these things, this is good for development. But at the time of delivery, your message manager can ask like, if you can present something like which is going to be customized, or something which is some kind of HTML markup is there which you can control basically, for making it beautiful and look okay kind of thing. So how do you handle that particular thing? So for that kind of scenario, what you can do is you can simply use another extension method. So let's say, guys, feel free to use these things because these extension methods, once you delve further, right, then you will come to know like there are variety of extension methods which even what I do whenever I feel necessary, I look into docs.microsoft.com and their example into that. So you will because the variety of use cases are there, and for even for all these use cases, this is already a written solution there is. So you might not be knowing unless you are delving into that particular document. Otherwise, you need to reinvent the vehicle. So just to save the time, I was telling this thing. So what I'm doing here is I'm doing something here. So what is this something? Anybody can tell me what this thing means here inside this brackets? So this is the C#6 thing, which is called string interpolation, one of the features which is introduced here. So what this is telling is anything which is, you just need to look for that particular status code and look for that file with that name, whether it's available into that area or not. If it is available, right, then you can can just use that thing, pick that thing and display that thing. So, all the public files, all public assets are generally served from a root folder, which is www root, right? And here I'm going to create 404.html and a simple HTML would be nice. Let's say error page. Let's have body. Let's say this is my awesome 404 page. All right. So here I have created one of the markups. It's a very simple markup. I have also used this status code with page redirects. Now, what do you think? Like, so it looks like I'm running out of time, right? So if I run this guy now, and just refresh this thing. So it actually routed to 404 HTML, but it returned me the message which is actually coming from my final middleware, right, which is a run method. So why it is that thing? What is missing here? Although I'm using this extension method app.use static files, which is going to look into that static files and going to present to that. So it is actually parsing that 404. So my this particular line is working fine. So what is the problem here? So the problem lies into that program file, how it will come to know that which is your content root. So you can use this use content root, and you need to tell there where it should look like, which directory. So you need to tell get, hopefully I'm typing syntactically correct, and I need to resolve this guy. So with that being said, so what I have done here is like I just forked this into that, and I just mentioned that, okay, for any public asset, you just use the term like you just look into the current directory and just use that like from where it is getting served. So if I run now, so let's say webinar is fine. Let's say something. So here is the thing, right? It came with my 404 page, which is a custom page. So this is it. Like we started with a blank canvas wherein we see like how to get download the stuff, and then what we have done is like converted this app into basically a variety of into a first of all web app and then into MVC app. So this is the thing around the around that ASP.NET Core. In the next section, what we can talk about is like this middleware ordering, right? Because this is pretty important, like how to configure. There are a variety of middlewares, when to use what. This is obvious question, like, and how to use that. So, and how do you write your own custom web server, which is an implementation of iServer. Why this Kestrel is only important. So what we have done here is basically, let me just come here. So, oops, it has started from. So we started from here, simple request response architecture, right? And then we inserted our Kestrel library there. So Kestrel is the HTTP web server, which is a managed web server, which is the newly minted web server from Microsoft, and which is built on top of libuv. Now libuv is the same thing on which Node.js has been built, but it has written in such a optimized manner that it is 2-3 times faster than actual Node.js. So Kestrel acts as a reverse proxy. Now one thing to understand here, okay, this is the middleware pipeline which I was talking about. So you can have n number of middlewares. It's like if and but clause, right? If it satisfies something, then it will run the logic which is sitting inside that middleware. Otherwise, it will skip to that next middleware. Otherwise, it will land into that terminal middleware and it will return you the things from there. So the very first thing which we have done is we have returned a string from there, and that is where Kestrel was working. Now let's see that, and then we tested around this, like whether that app is MVC app or not. If yes, and then return that string from that controller itself. Now hosting in production, basically Kestrel needs to be wrapped behind either IAS or Apache or Nginx, because as I said, like Kestrel is newly minted web server, which means is like it is not yet mature to compete with hackers. Like it is only written to serve the data, right? To serve the response. It is not written to to fight with malicious thing which is coming from the internet. For those particular things, IIS is pretty mature, which is and like other web servers like Nginx and Apache are pretty mature. So it has to be hosted behind those things, behind that actual web server. So it basically acts as a reverse proxy. So this is it. I'm done with that. So what I was talking about is like, if you guys have any questions around that, I guess you guys must be having questions. So you create a thread here. So I will answer those questions here. So 1 second. Looks like chat window is not opening, I guess. So that's the thing. So Manish, you are there?
Yes, Rahul.
Yeah, so I think I'm done with that. So if you guys need this PPT, right? And if you guys have any questions, so that is the link which I shared, right? So that way what can happen, they can create an issue and I can answer that particular question there, and that will be pretty global to everybody. So anyone can see the thing. There is obviously a guideline to ask, like if you see directly on AMA, so they need to go through this, and then what they can do is on issues section, right? They can create a new issue. So as soon as you write a new issue, I will get notified here on the mail. So I can quickly answer to that. They can also ask me and tweet me around my Twitter handle, so I can try to answer as early as possible. So that is the thing. All right. Thanks for joining.